All right, guys, we're talking about steak today. I have in front of me 3 beautiful steaks. We have a New York strip, we have a tenderloin, and we have a slightly confusing T-bone. T-bone is a bit of a confusing steak because it's actually 2 steaks. We have the New York strip on this side and the filet mignon over here. These 2 steaks require very different cooking methods. Now, what a T-bone is those 2 steaks separated by a bone, and that bone is the spinal vertebra of the cow. The tenderloin portion down here is going to be towards the bottom of the cow. It's a very thin strip of tenderloin that runs through the cow, with the New York strip above. Now, because of this, the tenderloin tends to get a lot less action while it's being moved around while the cow is still living. While the New York strip gets a little bit more activity. That builds intramuscular fat into the New York strip steak, but not into the tenderloin. The more intramuscular fat, the less lean the steak is, and the less inherently tender it's going to be. However, the fat brings a whole lot of flavor. So we're going to treat this steak with an extra step that this steak is not going to get. And we're going to treat this steak with a lot more care to keep the leanness from just shredding the steak apart and dropping all flavor from it entirely. So, let's get started. We're going to use the same ingredients to cook all of the steaks. Salt, pepper, rosemary, garlic, and butter. Now to season. We're going to start with some salt, and really don't be shy here. I see a lot of people that really under-season their steaks, especially something of this size, a very thick T-bone. So we're going to need a couple of pinches of kosher salt right on here. It's going to look like a light snowfall, but nothing that's going to keep you from moving into work. Flip it over. We're going to do the same on this side. Now we're going to grab some pepper. Kosher salt and black pepper are the classics. Really are going to help your steak shine. We're going to go back to the other side. And then we're going to come here and we're just going to mop up some of that seasoning that's left on the board. It's still good. And we need to get the sides as well. I have a feeling that this steak is going to curl up a little bit because there's a lot of fat here and I can see the connective tissue on the side of the strip side of this steak. So what I'm going to do is a little trick. I'm going to take this very sharp knife and I'm going to just place a cut right down the middle of that fat. It's going to make the connective tissue up here shorter so it has less room to curl. Even if it does curl, it's going to be smaller curls and are going to be less perceptible. But this steak is just about good to go. Much the same way, it's got a lot of this intramuscular fat, so we're going to treat this a lot of the same way that we treat the T-bone. And that's that. So the filet mignon we are going to sous vide, which involves using a couple of ingredients. I have here some garlic. Quick trick, push down on it, pops out a bunch of the cloves. I'm going to need a couple of cloves. Going to need some rosemary. And for the sauce, we are going to need a shallot, ginger, feed, a bag, and a vacuum pump. Now, we're going to need a couple of garlic cloves for this. Now, to peel garlic, you're just going to take it here, take your knife very carefully, put it on the side, give it a little smash. And it's okay, it doesn't have to be fully whole. In fact, if it's broken up a little bit, that's even better because it's going to let out a lot of the allicin, the enzymes that are in the garlic that help to break certain things down and also bring that great garlic flavor. And then to let even more of that allicin out, we're going to very finely cut off the roots of the garlic here. Give it Just another little crack. Here we have a sous vide bag. It is a vacuum sealable bag. Came with a sous vide. We're going to put our steak in here with a couple of aromatics, and then we're going to suck all the air out of here. That's actually what sous vide means. It is French for under vacuum. Our steak in. You can see that pretty well, right?
Yep.
You want to put a clove of garlic on either side. And we're going to do the same with a sprig of rosemary. We're going to bring our vacuum sealer, we're going to place it right on top. Beautiful. Alright, so I have in front of me some ingredients for a pan sauce. The filet mignon doesn't have a whole lot of flavor on its own, not like the strip or something a little bit more fatty like a ribeye. So we're going to make a pan sauce to kind of amplify a little bit of that flavor. So right here we have some butter, essential part of a sauce. Do not skimp the butter. We have some chicken stock. Now this is probably a little bit different from your chicken stock. Yours probably comes in a box or something else that's not a frozen puck, but this is homemade chicken stock. I like to make homemade chicken stock. I know that not everyone has that capability or has it on hand all the time. However, if you do make chicken stock, you can pour it into muffin tins or ice cube trays as I did, and have it on hand and have fresh chicken stock just pretty much whenever you want. Lasts quite a while. Over here, we have some red wine, ginger, shallot, and mushrooms. Now, typically, I wouldn't go for pre-sliced mushrooms, and typically I would go for portobello or cremini. They've got a little bit more meatiness, a little bit more umami that's going to bring a lot to the steak. However, there's a very good reason that I bought pre-sliced white mushrooms, and that's because that's all they had. So, let's get started. Going to separate the two parts now. Sometimes these can be really dirty in here. A lot of people get freaked out using shallots and they get turned off to them, but just give them a rinse. These happen to be very clean, but if they're dirty, just give them a rinse, get the dirt out of there. It's just what they were grown in. It's fine, I promise. I like to do mine in rings, but you can go ahead and dice. That is perfectly fine as well. For the ginger, we're going to cut off a couple inches. If you want to be very cost conscious, you can take a spoon and scrape off all of this skin. I'm not going to do that because I'm not going to use all of the ginger, and it goes bad faster than I can use it up anyways. So I'm just very carefully trying to take off the minimum amount possible. And one last thing, my secret ingredient. Better than bouillon, this is essentially a demi-glace. It's a very cooked down, concentrated beef stock. But demi-glace is something that they use in really nice steakhouses that is going to bring a whole lot of flavor. It's really going to bring your sauce together. I use this in pretty much every pan sauce that I make. So, we have the second of the two parts of the sous vide here. Now, we've already seen the vacuum sealing and the steak, but this is the immersion circulator itself. Now, what this is going to do, it's going to heat the water bath. The water is going to go into these holes down here, and up here, there's a very precise thermostat that is going to keep this at a very constant temperature. So, to start off, we have to get the water heating up. So we're going to just put this in, like so. Here we can set the temperature and the cooking time, and over here is just a display of what the current temperature of the water is. It's very hot water. I put it in there, it's already at 103. So we are going to turn the temperature way down to 130. I'm going to leave it at 1 hour for cook time, and we are going to press start. And now we can see very delicately it is bringing water in, and it is spitting it out. It is moving the water around, and it is going to keep it at a constant temperature. This is going to beep when it has reached 130 degrees to let us know that it's ready. So our T-bone and our New York strip are going to get about the same treatment. We're going to do a method called the reverse pan-sear. So the oven is set to 350 degrees, and we're going to cook them until they reach about 120 degrees in the center of the steak. So we're going to temp in the thickest part of the steak. We're going to look to undershoot our target temperature of 135 because this is not the last time that the steak is going to endure some heat. It's going to have some carryover cooking once we take it out of the oven. It's also going to get a nice sear. We're going to be cooking in a cast iron pan today. Cast iron is a really nice material to work with because it heats slowly, but it holds on to a lot of heat and can get really hot. It actually can get hot enough to crack my glass cooktop, so we have to be a little careful about temperature control. We're also going to be using vegetable oil today. Vegetable oil has a really high smoke point. We don't want to use something like olive oil or a more flavorful oil because it'll smoke up at a much lower temperature. Okay. Add a couple of tablespoons of a neutral oil in there, and what we're going to do is we're going to pretty quickly just make sure that it coats the bottom of the pan. Now, if it coats the bottom of the pan and does just about that, then you've put enough oil in. That's really it. We're going to let this heat up until we see the shimmer. So, our oil is shimmering, and we can see that because for one, the sides of the pan are smoking, but the oil itself has some ripples on the top. So this is where you want to live. So we're going to get into here. We're going to grab our New York strip, which is really at the perfect internal temperature for medium rare. The sizzle when we put the meat in is a really good sign that we have the pan up to temperature. We're going to add garlic, butter, rosemary, and thyme. We want the butter to infuse with the aromatics, so we're going to tilt the pan so that the butter pools around them. Now we can see that the steak is sticking. This is an indicator that the steak has not finished searing. When it is finished searing on a side, it will self-release and we can flip it. Don't move it if it's still sticking. In the meantime, we're going to butter baste. This accomplishes two things. One, infused butter is delicious, and we want that on our steak. Two, the hot butter will help to even out some of the color. We're going to tilt the pan, pool the butter in one portion of the pan, and then flip that onto our steak. And there we have it. Now we're going to continue to butter baste, but the difference here is we're going to take these aromatics and put them on top. The butter is getting pretty dark. This is actually browned butter. You can see that the milk fats down there are starting to brown and caramelize. The top, that part is clarified butter, but this is going to give a nice nuttiness to the steak, letting the butter caramelize like that. But we don't want it to burn, so we're going to turn it down a little bit. And now we're paying special attention to hitting the parts of the steak that have that kind of calico look to it, because again, we want to even out some of this color. Let's take a look-see. We've got a good sear on the other side, so we're going to take it up, and we want to get this fat cap here as well. We don't want to let that go unseared. that's done. Same procedure for the T-bone. Butter, aromatics, tilt, and baste. Don't forget to sear the fat cap too. Nice fat cap right there on the side. I'm going to throw it on the cutting board. Alright, so we have reached an hour of cooking time, so we're going to go ahead and take this out of the bag and prepare it for finishing. First, we are going to get our oil preheating. Now, this meat doesn't really look like it, but this is perfectly edible now. This is cooked to its ideal internal temperature, but it's got this really nasty palate appearance on the outside. It's really soft. It doesn't have any of the kind of steaky qualities that we want. So to do that, we're going to finish it over here in the cast iron. It's also a little misshapen, so we're going to take some of this butcher's twine. We're just going to tie it up. So our oil is shimmering. We're going to go ahead and place this down, and you also can tell if a pan is correctly hot by the sound that it makes when it comes out. So we've got this really nice sizzle here. And just like the other ones, we're going to take some butter. We're going to take a garlic clove. We just need one garlic clove because remember, it cooked with some aromatics as well. And likewise, we don't need a huge rosemary either. Not ready. How do you know it's not ready? It should move freely. I'm not giving it any kind of pressure. I can feel that it's still sticking on there, and I don't want to rip it off. And we want to be very sensitive to the minimum amount of cooking time that this is going to need, because there's no collagen, there's no connective tissue in here that needs to break down. It's a very lean cut, so it needs a minimum amount of cooking time so that it preserves that tenderness that tenderloins are known for. As you can see, we've got an even sear on both sides. We're going to take it off. We're going to prepare for our sauce. So we are going to start out by just very briefly cleaning out, not too much. We want to make sure that we get a lot of that burnt on protein and fat. I'm going to start with our mushrooms. Going to add a little bit of vegetable oil and some butter as well. Once we start to get this out and we get the mushrooms coated in a little bit of the oil, what we're going to want to do, we're going to add a little bit of kosher salt. This is actually going to help break down the mushrooms a little bit. It's going to help it cook a little bit faster. Now we're trying not to add too much oil at this stage because we are going to be adding oil later on in the game and we don't want to overdo it, especially with the butter. You really just want to keep them moving. You're going to start to see all this right now. It looks like smoke. It's not. It's steam. That's the water escaping from inside the mushrooms. Right there you can start to see the water actually coming out. Can now move some of this to the side. I'm going to come in with our shallots. Or as Gordon Ramsay likes to say, shallot. I'm going to add some shallot now. And after this, we are going to verbally abuse a sous chef. Now at this stage of the game, we don't have to get these cooking too hard. What we really want them to do is sweat. And we're using a relatively dry pan because we also want to get a little bit of char on it. Smoke and steak, they work really nicely together. Alright, so right about there. And now the fun stuff. We have about enough red wine. I'm going to add, and it's going to sizzle. You can flambe at this point, but it doesn't really do anything. Just cook off the alcohol. What you're going to want to do, you're going to want to scrape up all of that burnt-on goodness on the bottom. That stuff is called fond. And it's kind of like sugars and proteins, stuff that came from inside of the steak. You really want to get that up into your sauce. It really is going to add a whole lot of flavor to it. Now, what we've just done is called deglazing. So we've added something to the pan that is going to take all that fond up off the bottom of the pan. That's what deglazing is. Taking the fond off the bottom of the pan and making sure that it is in a medium that we can use to cook our sauce or whatever we're using the fond for. So we've seen that this alcohol has burned off quite a bit. We can tell because it doesn't burn my nostrils when I smell it. Now we are going to add probably about an equal amount of chicken stock. Doesn't really matter. About equal parts. Wine to chicken stock. That's what you're really looking for. And now obviously you're not going to have frozen pucks of chicken stock. So just go ahead and pour yours in. You don't need to wait for it to melt or anything. But this is what we have to work with. Now, since I'm using frozen chicken stock here, it's going to bring down the temperature a little bit. That's actually fine. That's going to help some of the crystallization a little bit later on down the road. Help to make a slightly thicker sauce without using something like flour as a thickener. Alright, so we're going to move on to our second phase of cooking the stock. We know that it's ready for finishing because when we move our spoon through, we can see a little trail that is being left behind of just dry pan. And that lets us know that it's reduced about as much as it really is going to. So, we are going to add in our butter. Now, at this point, this is actually called mounting the sauce. You want to do it in 2 stages. Once you start adding butter, you have to really be careful about it getting too hot or the sauce can do what's called breaking. Sauce breaking is when the fat from the butter can't really hold the stuff together enough and it starts to break down into this really runny, gooey butter and some more granular sauce bits, from the wine and the chicken stock. So now we're going to grate in our ginger. Got just a little bit of ginger and just about, I like a whole lot of ginger, personally, in my sauce. You can use the little knob of ginger to get this stuff off of there, but you really want to get everything that you've grated. We're going to let that marry with the flavors for a minute. Adding another splash of wine here because it looked like the sauce is starting to break. I'm also adding in the resting juices from the steak to add all of that beefy flavor back into the sauce. Got a little bit hotter than I really wanted it there. other piece of butter. Should be refrigerator cold butter. We'll help it out a little bit. We're also going to get our Better Than Bouillon up on deck. Now, as you can see, the butter is already thickening the sauce. You don't really need to use the Better Than Bouillon. You could just mount with butter, and you'll be perfectly fine. I like to use bouillon, but that's just me. There it is. All right, butter has thickened, so we're going to open this up. And we get a little bit of that, a bit more of that. I'm just going to scoop it right in and let it melt. And there we have it. Okay, so we have our three beautiful steaks: T-bone, New York strip, filet mignon. I'm going to carve these up for a couple of reasons. One, I happen to like that look on plating, but two, I want to show you guys how we did. So we'll start off with this guy. We're going to cut off the New York strip. We're going to get into there. We're going to get as close to the bone as we can, because we want all that meat. It comes right off just like that. Going to do the same with the filet mignon. So, as we can see, the interior of the steak is cooked to a beautiful pink, medium rare, a little rare in the center, but that's fine. And the tenderloin is actually a little bit overcooked. This is why it's weird to have these two cuts together in terms of cooking. You can see that one, the grain of the steak is going in a different direction. It's going down, where this one is more going this direction over here. That's going to be challenging. But it's also it's a little bit overcooked. Now, it's still going to be wonderfully tender. It's still going to be delicious. It's still going to be a great steak. But it's kind of a waste of a really expensive filet mignon. So we'll go over here to the New York strip. We'll give the same treatment. Now on these, I'm keeping the strips a little bit smaller, and that's just because typically with a steak like this, I would serve it with a pan sauce similar to what we're doing with the filet mignon, but it's going to be perfectly fine just like this. As we can see, we've got a whole lot of fat going on in here, but it's we're able to target the temperature a little bit more. This is a little bit more like medium. Slightly thinner steak, but it is going to be just fine. All that beautiful fat in there is going to be, it's rendered now. It's going to be really tasty. Moving over to the filet mignon. This one we were able to treat correctly. So hopefully it should be a little bit better than what we have over here. And we're cutting into it. We can see this is extremely tender. The knife is just going right through it. As you can see, it's going to be more edge-to-edge coverage. That's what you're going to get with a sous vide cut like this, and that's why I think that something so small like a filet mignon really works with the sous vide method. Whereas something like this, you've got that ring of well done and medium rare in the middle. Beautiful. I'm gonna get these on some plates. I want to get a lot of this mushroom right on there. Come on, little Miss Beaver. I want to just very gently lay it down. And there we have it. A T-bone, New York strip, and our filet mignon. 3 beautiful steaks. Even the T-bone was delicious. But hopefully now you can see why these 2 cuts of meat need separate special treatment to be their best selves. A lesson we can all probably learn from. Hope you enjoyed, and happy cooking.